Well, it's been 4 months, so I guess it's time to get back to La Bataille after all. This is the Marshall release, the Battle of Prussia, essentially. It kind of takes a look at four of the battles from 1806 to kind of define the campaign. And this was released in October 2017. Now, the package comes with four battles. Saalfeld, Jena, Hassenhausen, and Halle. Now, Hassenhausen is the rechristened Auerstedt, which goes back to the very beginning of La Bataille. And one of the first questions that comes up is, well, what's the difference between the new Hassenhausen and the old Auerstedt? And the truth is, I can't answer because I don't have the old Auerstedt. What I have is the Clash of Arms version of Auerstedt, which I think is based on the old Marshall, but it's a Clash title. And I think it is very different from the one Marshall put out. So I'm not sure I'm going to know exactly what the differences are, unless someone with an old original Auerstedt can point that out for me. It's kind of interesting. I think if Auerstedt was the very first title the Marshall guys themselves put out, Halle was the first title when they sort of reintroduced themselves to the hobby back in 2011. They put it out as a print and play game. So for me, I was interested to see what was the difference between that 2011 version and this now professionally published version of Halle. So this is a look at the 2011 print and play version of Halle. Start out with our comparison. So this map, the river, this is the west side of the map, the east side, the French will actually start attacking this direction. And the river looks a little geometrical, doesn't have a lot of hard right angles. Going down in a little closer. Well, I don't have a thing under plexi, so. The map came in 3 sections. There's this feature right along here. There's a raised road going across, kind of the swamps here. These covered bridges crossing the river in 3 locations. There's also, which for me anyway was important when I was playing this game, this ford right here across that stretch of the river. So when the French first attack, they're facing some advanced guard in this area. And that bridge and that ford are the 2 places where they can kind of make some headway. Moving to the east, you see the town. This is an old town. It has this thick outline representing the wall that surrounded the town. And, very heavy building, as well as all of this green cultivated area around the town. Going farther west, well, I guess maybe sticking with the town for a minute, there are these 2 gates for exiting the town. Otherwise, it's enclosed by the wall. So cavalry and regular infantry, artillery, they can't get through any spot other than the gate. So these are the 2 choke points. Then going back a little further, there's some villages, this garden area. These are sort of like orchards as opposed to the cultivated, and as opposed to some forested areas over there. Now, this battle takes place in October, and this looks like, like a snowscape, but it's not. It's just a white paper. That's no tinting or anything to it. Otherwise, it's a decent looking map for a print and play. The counters, I had to make them all up, but they look like typical La Bataille counters. Had a kind of a typical looking organizational chart. And don't let anybody ever tell you there's no command system in the Premier rules, because when they first came back with their Premier rules, they had a kind of command system in place. I don't remember if it persisted into their second game or not, but it was here for Halle, and it did whatever it did. I didn't shed a tear when they got rid of it, but they had it. And of course there's the typical special rules, including the description of units as well as a number of scenarios. I think there were 3 scenarios when this was first published. A historic and then a couple of alternates. So that is the print and play version that came out 6-7 years ago now. I'll start by looking at the new map. The new map is underneath the old one. See, it's kind of a lot bigger footprint. Does that mean it's covering more space? I'm not sure. I mean, up in the west we have both towns here. Those look fairly similar in the sense that they're both up in that corner. I do know that the new hexes are a little larger. I can explain some, but something that seems very different is this town, Olberg, is way down here in this corner. And the new map, it's kind of pretty far from the corner. Maybe some new cartography indicated the flow of the river was a little different. Just gonna pull these old maps out of the way here. Of course, the new map has color, a little tint to it, kind of some oranges and yellows. Again, it's an October battle, so has a bit of a fall feel to it. That already looks a little better. The river looks a little more natural and flowing, although it looks like it has changed position a little bit. Certainly down in this area, it was just sort of like this big right angle. So now it looks a little more, I think it looks a little more accurate. I don't know the geography, but it looks better from a map perspective. But getting down on it, the raised road is still here. It looks a little softer. I don't see any bridges. Like these were like very obvious covered bridges before. And now if I look at it, I'd say there aren't even fords there. So like I'm unable to cross the river? I don't think so. I think it's assumed that these are bridges going through here. But it's unusual that Marshall always has very obvious bridge marking. So to not see either those older, pretty covered bridges or just their standard bridges is a little strange. If I look at the standard terrain chart that comes with the game, there's a fairly typical looking bridge, and this thing is depicted as a ford. I don't think those are meant to be fords. I don't know. I don't know why they would change from those bridges to fords. So, nothing I've read so far tells me that those should be anything but bridges, but I'll go from what I know and go forward from there. Moving to the town, I guess keeping down low, see the kind of a better depiction of a wall there. Still a sort of fall-looking depiction of the town. More individual buildings and such. That looks pretty good. One thing that is a little different is the road network outside of the town. This is the road to Leipzig, going kind of southwest here, coming out of a gate. If I look at the original map here, comes out of the gate going due south. Then there's this little jog that comes off here, and then this road going north and south. If I look at it on this map, it's slightly different. Maybe better knowledge of the roads. I can only hope. But just a different depiction. And also up here in the north, there was a road depicted coming off this direction due east, which is no longer present on this new map. And there was that great mass of cultivated areas surrounding the town. All the green areas. See, most of those are gone, and we're left with these depictions. I checked, that is not a reunion for Cousin It's family. I'm pretty sure those are depicting haystacks, though just the scale of them seems to say they're about 40 or 50 feet tall. That's a 100-meter hex. That's a massive haystack there. We see that depiction repeated over here in this garden area. And that was depicted as an orchard on the old map. So sure, there's some stylistic changes, but the change in the amount of cultivated ground, I think, affects me a little bit anyway, because I remember I would attack with the French, get their light infantry in to the town, and then push them over the walls. They could scale these walls. They would deploy in all of that cultivated ground. It was a really good defensive position for them to start to skirmish and push back the Prussians and give the French infantry and cavalry a chance to get out of the gates, east and west. No, north and south, that's right. So that's going to change play a little bit. I'm going to assume those are still bridges crossing here. The one thing that's different with the change in the depiction of the river is that there's no longer that ford that was on the first map. It allowed you to sort of threaten two areas at once, keep the Prussians guessing right at the beginning. So that could prove to make it just a little more difficult for the French to get across the river and into the town if the Prussian advance guard wants to fight it out there. And how about the forces engaged? The French were largely looking at the First Corps, old on the right. They had these huge light infantry regiments that were very handy for getting through the town and over the walls. See, they're reduced in size and in number. So what had been the 8th Light Infantry looks to be the 8th Line Infantry now. But they have these Grenadier battalions, so that'll maybe give them a little bit of flexibility, but not quite as much as they had in the other battle. The other change, a couple of small revisions to the cavalry there. The other change is this. There's an alternative scenario that allows you to bring on a Dragoon division in support. This was the 2nd Dragoon in the original game. It looks like they've substituted the 4th? One of these, maybe the 3rd or the 4th Dragoon for that other one. Maybe better research, I don't know, but that old French cavalry was pretty strong, and all those light formations are very, very handy in breaking through the water and town barrier. How about the Prussian? This is depicted here in the new order of battle, and I'd say largely it's just about the same. The old Prussians were a little more maneuverable and slightly larger regiments and battalions, so they've been knocked down a little bit here. Just about the same amount of artillery, though a little slower. And their cavalry is just a bit weaker, just by a few increments here and there. Although I guess that's offset quite a bit by the stronger heavy cavalry they have with them. But otherwise, just about the same amount of artillery and infantry. And then the special rules, I think, are just about identical. I haven't done a word-for-word comparison yet, but other than the replacement of the Dragoon Division, which is referenced correctly in these rules, they seem to have the same scenarios and same setups and arrival times. So I think the two big changes are to the map and also to the configuration of that First Corps with the reduction of light infantry. I think it'll make this play, slightly different than the original. Make the French work just a little bit harder to get through the town and over the river. Okay, my only comment on Hassenhausen versus Old Auerstedt. This is the Queen in my, 2nd edition Clash of Bataille d'Auerstedt. So she has a crown. She's very slow, only a 3 movement factor, but she must be in a carriage. I don't know, maybe a necklace there. This one here is the new queen. She's much faster. She must be riding Scytale or something. No crown. Not nearly as pretty looking. But maybe more importantly, she's not nearly as inspirational as she was. Here's her reverse side with her plus 18 morale effect versus her measly little 4 in the new Hassenhausen game. What, she's not inspiring to her soldiers anymore? I don't know. I think that's a grave injustice to the queen, especially after the Marshall guys nominated her for the Man of the Year or whatever for their first award of that kind. So it seems like she was shortchanged a little bit.